My name is Brittny Wheeler. I have a ninth grader, day student. I don't know what else to say. She's pretty cool. I don't know what else to say about her.
And you're from Colorado Springs?
Yes, I'm from Colorado Springs.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Stansbury. My daughter's name is Grace, and she just started this year at Fountain Valley as an 11th grader. She is boarding because we live in Las Vegas, and I'm, interested in just being able to share a little bit more of our story on why we decided to wait until 11th grade and how this transition has been for her.
Go ahead, Steve.
Steve, you want to go ahead?
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost exactly where I was in the sequence. I'm Steve Kaczmarek. Actually, I am a parent of a current student. My daughter is a junior this year, Sarah, and she's been there. This will be her third year there. She started as a freshman, and then my son Riley graduated last year. So I guess I'm what do you call a past parent? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. And I'm a trustee.
So we've got a lot of different types of parents here, veteran parents, as I will call them, but also new parents as well, and across different grades. And we wanted to create a balance of voices and perspectives, because at some point in this process, parents want to hear from parents, because it helps to understand your role in all of this, and you play such a vital role in your student navigating the process, but then also how to help coach them into getting ready for this, and how to make decisions, and how to use your time wisely here. And then to the parent perspective on how it helped their student in the chapters beyond Fountain Valley. So these four are fantastic resources for everybody. Go for it, Tyler.
Great. So we're going to start with just a couple boarding questions for Crystal and Roxanne. Sort of the big question, right, that we hear all the time. How did you know that your child was ready to enroll in a boarding school?
Yeah, I think I can take that one first. Just to give a little bit more context about our journey to boarding school, we come from, generations of families that never went to boarding school. And so it was a really foreign concept to us. I can remember my daughter going, talking to boarding schools in 8th grade with her high school placement team and coming home and talking to us about it. And I was like, no way. Like I'm too selfish. I don't think that I can make that sacrifice of that emotional sacrifice of letting you go. And so I didn't. And so she left an independent school and she went into a private school that was not independent school. And I watched her for 2 years learn how to do school really well. But what I didn't see is an engagement in the curriculum and the instruction and the relationship with teachers. And so, last spring when she just came and said, I just need more, like this isn't, I need something else, and this isn't it. I think that's when we knew, like, it's time to make that emotional sacrifice. It's time to make the financial sacrifice to make sure that she's getting everything she needs in her high school experience.
I'll add on to that. My daughter actually started in 10th grade, and I did not go to boarding school. No one in my immediate family did either. I had cousins that went to boarding school. We have lots of friends who had gone to boarding school. And freshman year in my daughter's school was just school. School was pretty easy. She worked at it, but she wasn't very challenged. And she was kind of coasting through, and made me question, is she ever really going to remember anything, because she doesn't have to work that hard at remembering anything. And she also just kind of felt like she didn't have, find the ability to find her people. We live in a very remote area and it's pretty rural. And I kept telling her there was an opportunity for her to find her people, which she was very adamantly thinking that didn't exist. And we suddenly, summer, we were very late to the program, very late, as O'Neill will attest to, literally
Late
2
July.
weeks of applying and jumping in the car from California and driving her across the United States to go to school. My husband was a bit in a shock. But I think what was most important is that she suddenly said, maybe I can find my people. And we had looked at some other schools and we knew people who had gone to Fountain Valley, friends of ours, children. And I said, let's go. And we went. And as soon as we left the campus, she said, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. I mean, she made that decision. And I think that it felt right to her. And she knew she wanted to do it. As scary as it was, she really was like, okay, I want to do this. And so we supported her 100% in saying, okay, yeah, we'll get it all done in 2 weeks and leave.
And you did.
Yeah. And it was the best thing we ever did for her.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Great. Thank you to both of you. What advice would you give to incoming students and their parents about making the adjustment, right? What changes did you see your children make when they came here? How did you have to adjust as parents in terms of your relationship with them?
I think it's knowing that they're going to be really busy for a little bit and trying to overcome the anxiety about what's happening with them and not knowing all the time what's happening with them in the beginning, because they don't have a lot of time to call you and give you a daily update, to find out what's going on, and trusting that as soon as they do get settled into the routine and they do understand what's going on and they know how things are starting to work, then it becomes easier to talk to them. And I think that you can set up those times when you can. But as a parent, for sure, there's, the first 30 days of, are they enjoying it? Are they fitting in? Is it working out? Do they like their classes? It's harder because, when they're at home, you kind of get to see and whether they talk to you or not, you still get to see their appearance and their mood. And so you can gauge. Whereas knowing that, they're there and there's a bunch of people looking after them and they have advisors and they have teachers and their dorm parents who really are watching all of those things and helping them settle in.
For us, the statement that we made was, it's not if you get homesick when you get there, it's when you get homesick. And being able to have those conversations prior to leaving that we focused on. So what's your strategy? Because when you're homesick, you're not going to want to get out of bed. So what's your strategy to make sure that you get out? Because you're not going to realize, but the minute you leave that room and maybe go work out or go for a walk or go around people, that feeling of homesickness will start to dissipate. And so we did a lot of those conversations prior to coming to Fountain Valley, but I can't ignore the fact that there is that adjustment as a parent as well, because all of a sudden your role changes overnight and you go through a period of, what does this mean? Because I'm not the one there to tell her to clean her room or to make sure she's eating, or, my daughter was not feeling well the first few days and I felt so disconnected. And I think part of that is preparing yourselves as parents to say, it's going to be a shift in your role as a parent, but you're still a parent. It might look or feel differently and you've got to be prepared for that. And for me, luckily, my daughter was placed with a roommate whose mom was letting her go to boarding school for the first time as well. And we were able to connect about how it felt, and that helped quite a bit.
That's great. Thanks, Roxanne. Brittny, I saw you nodding your head through some of those. Do you want to give some input on what it's been like as a new day student parent?
I think for me, the biggest adjustment for Brianna is she's gone all day, right? And so she still comes home, but she's gone for a large chunk of the day, and really having to step back from managing her time and watching her step up and be responsible for herself and advocate for herself. There was a time when she would never question anything or speak up. And she really, before parent-teacher conferences, advocated for the grade that she was getting in one of her classes, and didn't, really think that that was the right grade, and found out why it was graded that way. And it was all fixed and nice when it came to me. And I was so surprised, because I was that parent that was like in there, like, what is this grade? What are you doing? And now to kind of see, I don't have that interaction with her like I'm used to having, because she's gone so much, but really just watching her learn to kind of take the reins and say, it's okay, Mom, I've got it, don't worry. So that's been kind of the same, even though she's a day student, just not bugging her, not texting her, and seeing what she's doing, letting her learn how to be away from us, and just take control of where she's at in her education.
That's great. Thanks, Brittany. Steve, as a parent of a recent graduate, do you have any input on how your relationship with your two children currently stands? One being a current student and one being off at college, and how Fountain Valley played a role in that?
Yeah, so great question. So actually Riley flew in last night because Canada has a different Thanksgiving break than the US. So the good news is the border is open. But when Riley saw Sarah last night at 11 o'clock when he walked in, they gave each other this huge hug. And then they immediately started talking about, was it APUSH? So American AP history, I don't know, APUSH, I don't know, they call it APUSH. They're like, oh, what are you doing? And what's the teacher saying? I'm like, oh my God, you walk in and right away you're talking about school? It's like, aren't there other things to catch up on? So I think the biggest issue, quite honestly, and Riley would kill me if he heard this, is he's having a hard time letting go of Fountain Valley. He loved it so much. He still is talking to faculty on campus. And for full disclosure, he is thinking about transferring to a different college. That's a whole different discussion. But his immediate fallback was, I'm talking to the professors, I'm talking to the college guidance counselors at Fountain Valley. And as a result, he's very connected at the school, and he's talking to his sister like every day, and was wondering why she didn't do, I don't know, the zombie thing on Friday. Maybe you guys know what that is. I don't know. Sarah didn't do it, and he was very disappointed. So I don't know. I mean, is that what you're looking for? It's like, yeah, they're totally still into Fountain Valley, even as a grad. So it's fun.
That's great.
He's referring to Humans versus Zombies, which is a massive all-campus Nerf war, where they start out with one zombie, and then eventually it ends when there's only one human left. and they're not changing the status of their chemistry, I promise. It's just, if you're tagged, then they're a zombie.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm going to throw, just giving Electa's, story and that whole grade. I think Electa, having gone to school at Fountain Valley, she never would have looked at going to school in Scotland. It would not have crossed her mind. She had international roommates. She had a lot of international friends. She discovered there how important it was to her to understand other people's lifestyles, their cultures, where they came from. And she's the one that came up with wanting to go to school in Scotland, and said she wanted to go international, but they had to speak English because she was afraid to go somewhere else. And that was kind of her driving that train. But I truly credit Fountain Valley and the experiences and the friendships and the people that she met there as to why that was the direction that she went in.
Yeah, and if I just want, there I was gonna say, well, why is Riley thinking about transferring? It's too big. It's 60,000 students.
Oh, yeah.
And he got there despite all of our recommendations of those are going to be 300 student classes. He got there and he's like, I heard you, but I didn't understand. He's like, I want something like Fountain Valley. So that's what he's regrouping to. Yeah. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah, needs shift. Things that were valuable at one point may not be valuable once you get there, and context and perspective matter. Yeah. Tyler, you're on mute.
Sorry. Staying on a topic that we just touched on, Brittany and Steve, can you talk a little bit about whether you've become more hands-on or hands-off with your children's education, right? Coming into high school, parents tend to be hands-on, and we're all aware that that changes, especially with a school like Fountain Valley. Any input on that?
Yeah, Brittany, I can start if that's all right. So yeah, Riley wanted to go to Fountain Valley because he wanted to be in a system where other students cared about their education. The public education in Colorado Springs, I think I forgot to mention that, is very good. The high school, it's big, it's great, but it's very, very different. But he wanted to be around students that really, really wanted to learn. And he found that at Fountain Valley. And, but as a result, his mother, my wife, and I are, how's it going? We were checking in, and he finally just said enough. And so when Sarah, now a junior, when she started as a freshman, they both started there. It's like, yeah, we know. All right, we'll stay out of it. We won't ask all the questions. And so what we found ourselves is getting very involved in the school, but not their day-to-day academic life.
I will add to that. I agree with a lot of, I have a very similar experience with Brianna. I think that what's different for me is that we learned at a young age that Brianna was talented and gifted, right? And so at some point I had to step in and really be the person advocating for her education and say, this is not enough. She's not getting challenged, and keep going to the schools and to the meetings. And I imagined that so Brianna was in a private school for gifted children last year. And I imagined that coming from that school to Fountain Valley, there would still be some work to ensure that she felt challenged and that her needs were met academically. And she, like I said, she's really taken control of that on her own. One day she came home from school and she said, I think I need to be, in a more challenging math class. And I'm ready, right? I'm like, okay, who do we need to call? Let's talk to your advisor. She's like, no, I already did it. I talked to my advisor, we met. And I was a little emotional, right? Because forever I've taken care of what she needed and what, academically making sure that she was reaching the milestones that she needed to get to where she wanted in life. And to just kind of see her bring it to me after the fact is surprising for her. She doesn't like confrontation. She's very much an organized, this is what it is, this is what we have to do, and not challenge anything. So for her to step up and say, I think I need to say something and not need me for that was really great. But like I said, a little bit emotional for me because I've been doing it for so long. So I would agree with Steve in saying that I'm involved in her being a student at Fountain Valley, but I don't have to worry about being involved in making sure that she's getting what she needs academically.
Yeah, and actually you bring up a great point. One thing I can add is the I think they're quarterly. I don't know, we get emails all the time from their advisors, and it's not yes, showing up, participating, blah, blah, blah. The reports from the advisors to us about each subject, about our kids, and we have two different advisors, are absolutely amazing. Their assessment of our children's progress, attitudes, independent, how are they working with, other kids, just are they fitting in freshman year to how are they excelling? Those comments are just, honestly, they're spectacular. They take a lot of time and they understand the kids. And I think, and I don't know, O'Neill, you may know this, how big are the advisee groups? It's like 8 or less, I think, 5. Yeah, I knew it was small. But that goes a long way for parents who may be, a long way away. Those advisors are good, and you're going to get solid reports.
It's great. Thank you, Steve. Just as a question to all 4 of you, why did you consider an independent education for your child, right? A few of you have touched on it, but for those of you that haven't, what was the motivating factor?
I'll go. Sorry. I think it wasn't any one thing. You know, my daughter was interested in a lot of different things. She was academically not being challenged. She loved sports. She loved to do art. And in our school, she wasn't able to do art. We didn't even have art. She fell in love with the art barn there. I mean, it was a big thing. She plays soccer for the University of St. Andrews now. She loves soccer. She loves school. So there was all of those things that she wanted to do that really just didn't come together in one place for us here, collectively. And I would say that my relationship with her as a teenage daughter and mother actually grew significantly closer. We weren't butting heads anymore because she was in boarding school and there were rules. They weren't my rules I was imposing upon her. They were the school rules, and she respected those. And there were consequences if you don't respect those rules. But suddenly it's not me arguing with her about what she's able to do and not do. And she started to reach out to me for things that she was kind of closing off to before she went away to school. And so that was a huge benefit to going to an independent school. Classes weren't structured in this, line of, you have to take this and you have to take that. She was able to really focus on what interests her, what she was good at, and also what was going to challenge her. And her teachers challenged her, every aspect all the way around. So I don't know if that answers it, but for all of those reasons is why, going to boarding school in specific was really, the best answer for her. And Fountain Valley was certainly her people. And she knew that. She knew that more than we knew that. She knew that.
I think for us, I don't think you always know the value of independent school until you don't have an independent school. And so to see my daughter go from an elementary school that was independent to a private school that was not independent, what was missing was that whole child education. And what we value so much as a family is we know she's going to get the academic skills at whatever high school she goes to, but the competencies are so much more important to us. And to see her being able to think critically and to have to collaborate and to have so much opportunity to be creative about the content that she's learning is so important. And the minute she got onto the campus at Fountain Valley, it was back. And we saw that light just come on again, and how she is emotionally and intrinsically motivated by the content that she's learning. And it's because they understand whole child education. My daughter is a basketball player, but she's so much more. And now at Fountain Valley, she talks to us nonstop about her photography teacher and, a book that a teacher gave her that she doesn't even have this teacher, but he found out that what kind of books she loves to read. And he made sure he got one in her hands. And I think that's what we were looking for. It comes down to, I think teachers at independent schools, they get into working at independent schools because they really want to make a difference in kids' lives, and they enjoy that age group, and they go that extra mile to form those connections with kids, and it makes all the difference.
Well, I will say, I feel like Brianna's been in an independent school for a while. We did go back. She wanted the social experience of going to public school. And she just, like everybody's pretty much said, she just could not be in an environment where the other students didn't care about their education. Additionally, she wanted to find her people. And it's so funny that you say that, because Brianna is always just like the little smart, little nerdy girl who focuses on her work and didn't really build strong relationships with her peers. She had friends, but it was very casual, that she wasn't invested really outside of school in those relationships. And now to find her asking to go to school on the weekend to participate in an event, or, we are constantly meeting up with other kids that are at school. And that's just something that she hasn't done. She really just always is focused on her work. She enjoys learning. That has been her driving focus since like 4th grade. That's what she cared about, was learning. And now it's really here, she's getting to do both. She's getting to blossom socially. She's getting to learn to advocate for herself academically. She's getting to, be challenged in the ways that she feels is appropriate for what she wants to do with her life. And it's something that I wouldn't, even when we came to Fountain Valley, I wouldn't have expected her to respond the way that she has in these few months. So it's been really good.
And just to confirm, I was on a campus tour today, Brittany, and we walked by the 3 new dorms, and there was your daughter with another student doing math homework. Okay.
Yes,
So,
that sounds like her.
Just so you know, it is happening. All right. I have confirmation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your input on that. We have the benefit here of having a smaller group of prospective families, and I want to give some time to them. So for any of our 7 prospective families that are here, if you have questions for any of these current or past parents, feel free to either throw them up in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask them. I think that this is a nice benefit that you get, right? Hopefully you can all come and tour campus and meet O'Neill and myself and get to ask these questions in person, but having access to current parents is definitely pretty nice.
Don't be shy now.
Yeah, Mari, do you want to go?
Yes, hi. I have a question. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed listening to all your experiences. My question is about boarding versus being a boarding student versus day student. And I know that the majority of the students are boarding, and I'm just wondering how they are, what is being done to sort of promote like social interactions amongst, sort of different students. And if there's any like significant advantage to being one versus the other. Thank you.
So
Yeah,
I will say this really
go ahead.
quickly. My daughter's a day student, and she's ready already to be a boarding student. She feels like there's just so much that she doesn't want to miss out on. And we've talked about maybe in her later years going that route so that she can prepare for life on a college campus without us. But the events really focus on bringing them together, whether they're boarding or day students. And so my daughter really loves anime, right? And she's never had any friends that are into anime. And oh my gosh, her boarding student best friend is into anime and knows everything that, she knows about it. And they have this really close relationship. And it's not like there's any kind of difference between the friendships that she has with the other students that are day students. They interact on the same social levels. And she can go up there on the weekends and hang out, and do things. That there are enough opportunities that they get to socialize, whether they're boarding or day. That's just our experience.
Yeah, and Mari, are you local? So you could be and I'm sorry, I didn't catch if it was a son or daughter. Could board or be a day student?
Yeah, we were planning to be local, so we were wondering about the day student. Does anyone ever switch? Sometimes start as a day student and then does that does okay.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. So we talked about both. I went to boarding school out east a long time ago, but so I have always told my wife, yeah, we need to have them boarders and whatever. And the discussion was, let's just start them as day students. And then junior, senior year, we'll switch them to boarders when they're ready. What we found out was the kids wanted to switch to boarders, but mom, my wife, was not ready. So it wasn't about the kids. She said, they're leaving for college soon. That's soon enough. They can't board. But yeah, a lot of students switch. The advantages of being a boarding student are, your food's always ready and you can sleep in later. And you have that camaraderie. I think the split is 70-30. Day student or or whatever, boarding versus day. And but the benefits of being a day student are that if you time it right, you finish sports, you go run, grab dinner, you finish it on the bus, and you do some work on the bus. They actually do a lot of homework on the bus, and then they get home and then they run right to their room. So from a parent standpoint, you don't see them a lot, but they got it figured out. They just kind of get into the groove, and it's a longer day than what they were used to coming out of middle school for sure. But there's advantages and disadvantages for both. And yeah, if you can switch junior year when mom and dad are ready to have them leave, yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And anytime that is an option or a thought that bubbles up to the surface from the family standpoint, whether you're in the application process or you're a current student and you're pondering this, just call the admission office. Because what we can do is provide context to the greater picture of what that would mean from a day-to-day standpoint, what that would mean from a financial standpoint, what that would mean from a leadership standpoint. There's different leadership roles for boarders in the dorm than there are for day students who don't live in the dorm. They're not better or worse, but they are different. So I think looking at the whole picture is what you'll need to consider, whether you're an applicant thinking about maybe relocating, which people consider, or if you think, hey, this might be rushed, let's have them start as a boarder, but if we end up relocating, what does that look like? Where you live doesn't necessarily mean it has to affect the student's interaction with the school. So we have local boarders. Okay. And we have people as far south as, I think, 35, 40 minutes south of Pueblo, which is already an hour away. So they live an hour and a half away, and they're day students. That's a dicey situation. It's a long day. It makes the day probably ending at 7:30 p.m., which might not be as sustainable. So just give us a call, talk to your admission counselor about it. Or if you end up coming here as a boarder and you want to switch to a day or vice versa, all you got to do is give us a call and we can kind of work that through from the adult perspective.
And so, I think it's important to note too, that a lot of students and families coming in think that the difference between being a day student and boarding student and the experience is a lot further apart than it actually is. I'm going to put Crystal on the spot as having a daughter who was a boarding student, but I know was very close friends with day students, and tying in some of what Brittny has already experienced as a new day student parent. Day students come to campus quite a bit on weekends. They might have sporting events on Saturdays. There might be, social events on a Friday night, whether it be stupid night out or a dance. They may know that there's open gym or open art barn on a Saturday or a Sunday that they want to participate in. At the same time, boarding students can go home with day students, right? And the friends that they make here are going to be hopefully friends for life, but certainly very, very close friends while they're here. I'm sure Steve has had many boarding students in his house over the years.
Thank you, Steve.
And boarding students, are gonna call you as parents and say, hey, I've got this great friend on campus. Maybe you've met him, maybe you haven't, but they invited me over their house for the weekend, and we're gonna go skiing or hiking in the mountains. And our day and our boarding students are very connected. It's tough to separate the experiences. Granted, they're different. Day students get to go home and see their parents, right? But a lot of what they do definitely intertwines. Was that accurate, Crystal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes both ways. I think that the kids that end up connecting, I don't think there's any relevancy on whether or not they're day students or boarding students. I think that when they make those friendship connections, it's really not bound to that. And yes, there's, there's envy on both sides of the fence, right? So, there's envy from the boarding students that, they get to go home and be with their parents and eat whatever they want and, go to Starbucks if they want to and, have, different capabilities, if you will. Whereas, the day students are super envious of the boarding students because, they're kind of living this, life all on their own. And so I think it goes both ways, and they all get along really, really well. And I think that there's not much of a dissemination. I will tell you that before choosing Fountain Valley, I had looked at relocating with my daughter to a different place, and she was going to be a day student. And how it all worked out in the end is truly how it was supposed to be, because it's what really was kind of meant to be and what was going to work for her. I will say, it has made it easier for me to let go on the college side and allow her to become the adult that I know that she's responsible enough to become, because she was a boarder, and that she is independent and she can be thousands and thousands of miles away from me now. And it's no different for her being in another continent for me as it is now than I was talking to her when she was at Fountain Valley. I'm still just as connected to her and the distance hasn't made any difference. And I don't think I would have felt that way had she not been a boarding student. And it really did create some independence on that. So I think it's what's right for your family and for each individual person, because everybody is different. But no concerns on the who hangs out. And I wouldn't say that there's that, definitive separation at all.
Yeah. Thanks, Crystal. So we have a good question in the chat. It says, for parents with boarding students that live far away from Fountain Valley, how often do you see your kids? Are there typical times when parents come to campus? For an example, parents' weekend. And is it typical that boarding students come home for bigger breaks like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and/or long weekends? So Crystal, that might kind of go to you, seeing we have a new boarding parent in Roxanne, a day student in Brittany, and a day in Steve. Do you want to jump back on that?
So, in the beginning, I kind of wanted to go a lot, especially to go see sporting events or see her do, play and participate in some things. Obviously the parent weekend you'll definitely go to, but she actually did fly home on her own as well. On a weekend or something, like if we had something big going on that we wanted her to come home for the weekend, she did that in addition to us going there. And, we even pulled her out to go, to a Bronco game in Denver, kind of a thing. And so, those were not specific.
That's great. And to add a little bit of, admission office perspective there. We do have set weekends, right, that are parent weekends on campus. Parents are also welcome anytime, right? We luckily we're past COVID enough that, we're starting to welcome families back, and whether boarding or day, we want you here, right? We want you to come and meet your kids' friends. I always tell students it is in their best interest for their parents to be on campus as much as possible, right? You're going to meet their friends so that when they ask, oh, can I go over, so-and-so's house, or can I go on a trip, or I'm interested in this interim and here are the students going, you're going to be comfortable saying, I've met those kids and they're great students, and yes, you can go. Most of our students do travel home for our fall break, our winter break, and then spring break post interim. And then we have very long weekends, like we said, family visiting day. There certainly isn't a lack of opportunities for families to formally visit campus. But again, you're always welcome to come and visit whenever. Not during the school day and pull them out of class, right? We want you to come on the weekend or maybe an afternoon, but we definitely want you here.
And just to tack on to that, what I would say is about every 6 to 8 weeks, there's a break. The longest time they will go without a break is the first 8 weeks. That's the first quarter, and that's really to cement their new environment. But after that, you've got a long fall break that's like 4 or 5 days. Campus isn't closed, but a lot of times if you live close by, maybe that's where you bring your student home and they bring a friend. or 2 or 3 or 4, a whole dorm. No, I'm just kidding. But then a month later, there's Thanksgiving break. Then there's winter break a month later. Then there's long winter weekend. Then there's interim and spring break. And the final push, the last 7 weeks, is really the fourth quarter. And there's a lot. We jam as much as possible into that 7 weeks. So the first 8 and the last 7 of the school year are the longest times in which there will be uninterrupted scheduling. But that's also when we try to inject parents. We want parents to come to campus during those 2, 8 and 7 week times. And that's just the schedule. That's not to say that, hey, so-and-so is getting married and we want you to come home for the weekend. There's another question in here. Meryl, great question about what kids do on the weekends. I'll let the parents answer that. But what I will tack on to this ahead of time is 70% of our students board. Okay. Colorado is a massive state. You can drive 7 hours and still be in the state. A lot of our kids domestically and internationally are not from the state of Colorado. So it's not easily accessible to drive home for most of our students. Therefore, we don't have a 5-day boarding program. Our boarding program is full-time, the whole 10 months, 10 and a half-ish months that you're here. So kids aren't vacating the campus on the weekends. They're there on the weekends. So that's the administrative side. I'll let the parents sort of tackle this question, which is what do boarding students and day students do on the weekends? What activities are there for your kids in each season, that kind of thing. And from the parent perspective, how engaging are weekends? So we'll toss that out to you guys and answer it.
I can tell you as a parent, it's one of my favorite days of the week when that list comes out of all the offerings for the weekend. And I just sit there and I pretend like, what would I do if I was there? And I wish I could go back and redo my high school because I'm so jealous of these opportunities they get. But I love being able to reach out to Grace and be like, so what are you going to do this weekend? And she always has a tough time deciding because there's so much, from yoga to going to the Old Town section or shopping at a thrift store or going to movies with a group of people. I mean, they really, open up their campus, but also look to see what they can do around the city for the kids to be able to get out and attend. And I think it's such a great way for them to find out, like getting kids to try things or do things that they may normally not do if they were living at home and they don't have a cruise director as a parent who can tell them like all these offerings to choose from. I just think it's always such a great selection of choices.
Yeah, and outside of humans versus zombies and Stupid Night Out, which have been mentioned, during the winter, there are buses that run up to the ski hills. So there's the athletic center, I think, is generally wide open. I know Riley spent a lot of time there. There's horses, as you know, on campus. In addition to them just hanging out and having a pickup game of tennis or soccer or volleyball or whatever, there's always something going on. If they want to do something, there's stuff there.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too, right? Especially from the parent perspective. Yes, your kids are going to have a tremendous amount of opportunities to have fun. Roxanne's referring to what we call the weekend menu that gets sent out every Thursday, and it has all the offerings in the weekend. There will also be weekends where you ask your kids what they're doing and they say studying, right? Especially Crystal and Steve, who have recent grads, right, in their senior years. Students are taking advanced classes. Students are really challenging themselves. There are going to be times where they're going to feel like a college student to you, and they might not come out of their rooms because they're working on essays or finals, or they've picked up 2 science APs in their final semester, right? And so students are going to learn just by being a Fountain Valley student. They're going to learn how to juggle their time, how to manage their time, how to be organized, what is important at that moment. But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff to do.
And I would just tack onto that. There's also going to be downtime. And I think every adult here values balance. And I think that trickles down to the students. So I think the language from advisor to student is going to be, okay, you're slammed. When are you going to have some you time? And usually the kids look at the advisor like, what? What do you mean you time? I gotta be pedal to the metal. And they're like, okay, well, hit pause, unplug, and take a walk. Go Netflix. Like just be a kid too. And so I think for every minute that they're cramming and they're doing the group project and they're really pedal to the metal, I think we do a good job of also kind of being that voice of reason that you're saying, okay, now go have fun, right? And it could be planned fun or unstructured parallel play. Is that what they call it these days? You know, where it's like, okay, go be creative-ish, you know, like go walk around campus, go take Mr. Turner's dog for a walk. We will pay a pretty penny for that to occur. So, you know, I think that balance comes from the adults because we need it. And sometimes we aren't that great at it. And I think the kids really feed off of that and go, okay, what am I going to do to unplug? And I think weekends we attempt to strike that balance for sure.
I just kind of wanted to, if I can throw in just one other thing. One of the great things is, you know, you can get food delivery now and it's easy and it's great. And a lot of kids do that on the weekends. Everybody's kind of touched on all of the other things, but, you know, I think Fountain Valley does an exceptional job on weekend activities, and not just weekend, but even midweek surprise type things to break up the monotony of the week, hangouts and whatnot. You know, I mean, there's so much more to just the weekend, but I think Fountain Valley, based on having gone and looked at a lot of other places, that, you know, really provide an outlet for kids to find something that they would be interested in doing on a weekend.
That's great. Thank you, christl. So we're going to end on the first question in the chat. And this is going to be for christl and Steve as parents of recent grads. And Steve talked about this a little bit, but how was the transition from Fountain Valley to college for your children, right? How do you think that their experience here influenced how they experienced those first couple weeks in that transition?
Yeah, I'll start. Like I said earlier, I went to a boarding school as well, and the transition from boarding school to college was a non-event. It was just like, yep, you pack up your room and you move it from one dorm room to the next. And, you know, all of a sudden college is easy and you figure out what's all the hubbub about. And it's because you're so well prepared. And to speak specifically about Riley, it was the same thing. He got there, he kind of just moved his stuff around and said, okay, where's the dining hall? He always starts at the dining hall and then he figures out where the classes are. And, you know, I mean, really the biggest adjustment for him was the fact that at where he is now, he has to pay by the item and he doesn't just walk in and eat as much as he wants. And when you have a growing boy, that gets expensive, which he was worried about, but it was a non-issue from the transition standpoint. And I think that's probably the single most important thing that I could say in terms of the value of Fountain Valley is that you're preparing them for the next step and they come out very, very well prepared.
Yeah, I would say the maturity level of Electa's transition, and she's pretty young as well. So, I mean, she moved to Scotland. She just turned 18. So she was only 17 on her own and was not concerned at all about how to make friendships, what kind of clubs might interest her, you know, the classes she was going to take, how to navigate, how to find them, how to figure them out. I mean, all of that was really easy for her. And again, you kind of have that nervousness of, you know, you need to help them to make sure they're doing it all. And I mean, she's got it covered. You know, hey, by the way, mom, this is due, you know, you need to make a payment here, you know, whatnot. She's kind of telling me what needs to be done. I'm not trying to chase her around to make sure that she got it done. You know, she went and got her books, you know, there was no hand holding whatsoever. And she was confident in being able to do that. But not only that, but academically, it's interesting when your kids, you know, are with other peers now out in the real world and they're in school and that she's doing so incredibly well. And, you know, there's kids that came from great schools all over the place. And the fact that she is doing really well and holding her own is truly because of the groundwork that Fountain Valley gave her to get there. So it's not just socially, it's also academically. And, you know, I will say this, teach your kids how to do laundry before they go. I wrote, like, that was the one thing I didn't do. She got there and she was like, I don't really know how to, you know, and I mean, that's terrible of me to admit that as a mom, but you know, like, you know, are your soccer socks clean? You know, they do need to know how to do those things that you just kind of do for them without telling them about. But, you know, it's great.
Now, Crystal, I'm not going to let you off the hook without telling them the story you told me over the phone a couple of weeks ago about a certain test that she thought she didn't do well on. Was it chemistry? No.
It was. So she's a biochem major, and she calls me up, and she's, you know, the grading is very different in Europe than it is in the United States, and you kind of go straight into it, and so it's difficult. And she says to me, "So, Mom, you know, so it's a scale of 1 to 20. Getting a 17 here is like an A, and I don't know anybody that's ever gotten more than a 17." And she goes, "So I'm really just hoping I get a 12." And she's super worried about it. And, you know, weeks go by because unlike in the States, they don't, you know, they're not having a quiz all the time. You go 4 weeks and you haven't had anything. And all of a sudden you have this big test and it's, you know, this is all it. And she calls me and she goes, "Mom, I got a 17 and a half." And I was like, wow, you got a 17 and a half. And she was so excited. And her whole study group, the highest score was a 12. Her roommate, who is from Europe, got like a 5. I mean, it was overwhelming, and she was just ecstatic. And I said, "Well, then I think you knew more than you thought you did, and you knew how to prepare. Whether you didn't think you did, you certainly did."
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if that's the exact story I shared with you, because there's been a lot, actually.
You did, and I will share this, just my interpretation of the previous story. She told me, you know, Electa went to St. Andrews. One of her big things was playing soccer, and so she wanted to make sure that she was able to play soccer, and she made the varsity or the top team, but was not going to play as much. And so instead, she opted to go down to the second team to play more, but also to give herself time to do other things and join other clubs. And
Yes.
so she didn't pigeonhole herself into, I'm only the soccer player who does academics at St. Andrews. I want to be that Swiss Army knife who tackles a lot of different things, even into college. And that story rings true to me, because I think our goal is for these students to be Swiss Army knives when they walk out of here. Sharp tools, a big fat Swiss Army knife, not the one with like one other tool. And these tools are sharp. They know how to use them, and all the things that are going to come at them in life that we all know about and have muscled through at times, they're going to still muscle through them. That's a badge of honor that life provides. But I think when they leave our nest and they go to any other sort of nest and they look around and they see their peers like, oh, they don't have any tools. Oh, look at all the tools I have. It reinforces what they've learned, and now they're ahead of the curve. And sometimes it's just that little note, that little understanding of being ahead of the curve that they just launch. And that's, I think, our goal. It's not about the outcomes, though. It is about tending to that process. And so wherever they end up running towards, they're going to be ready to tackle it. You're on mute, Tyler.
I want to be conscious of all of your time. Thank you to our 4 sets of parents for spending some time with us. We're going to have, virtual events probably like every 3 weeks. As you can tell, these are typically small, somewhat personal. Please don't feel like you have to join them, but you are welcome to join all of them if you want. This is just a way for us to put information out there. You can see our faces, and you can, meet whether it be faculty or current parents or administrators or us in the admission office. We want to make ourselves available to you and help you understand Fountain Valley. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions following this. Yeah, it's wonderful to see you all.
Thanks so much for the time.